Greetings, everyone. Here we are, Bible study. Finally, at last. And today is the 15th day of the month of June 2013. And it is the 5th day of the month of Tammuz, which began on Tuesday after they saw the new moon Monday night in Israel, in Jerusalem. And that's the Jewish calendar says it's the 7th day of Tammuz. So they're 2 days off this month, which is typical because they go by a mathematical calendar which was invented and made into a calendar in about 358 AD in the days of Rabbi Hillel II. And that's when they decided that they needed to have a permanent calendar because the Roman Empire forbade the Sanhedrin to meet and to have calendar new moon observations throughout the Roman Empire. And the Jews, being scattered, no longer having a nation, they decided to use the old backup system that they'd always had since the days of Moses to verify the new moon sightings. Well, they just did away with the sightings and used the backup system, which was a mathematical, astronomical, cycle-based system. And so the Jews this month are 2 days early in declaring the new month. 2 days is 2 days. There are no holy days this month, so I guess we don't need to worry about it. There's no holy days, so they can't get that wrong. And the Sabbath day is independent of the new moon, so they can't really get that wrong. Unless they do like the Christians who just reject the Sabbath and go with Sunday, or the Muslims who reject the Sabbath and go with Friday. They can get that all wrong, and they do. Well, it is the 15th day of the month of June, and a lot of things have been happening, so I want to get back into the grind here after the holy days have all come and gone, and Pentecost is over, and now we're slugging through the summer months, and nature's reawakening, and our garden's growing, and potato bushes are doing very nice out there. Thank you very much. Then we got the corn planted, and we've been harvesting radishes, and things are looking pretty good. But we still have a long ways to go through the summer. And I think I mentioned last week that Cappy and I went down to Los Angeles for 5 days to visit our son and daughter and their families, and to see our grandson, the new one, born just a year ago, June the 2nd, Nicolo Alexandro Carabella. And he's just turned 1, and it's just a beautiful bouncing baby boy, and it's nice to get reacquainted with our children and grandchildren, and to spend some time with them, just some really good time just to be with them. It was really nice and very pleasant for everybody. And I should say there were no fights and no fisticuffs and no arguments and no hard feelings and no disputes over scripture or over prophecy or over politics or religion or anything. Nothing came up like that this year, and Cappy says high five. She's been praying about that very vigorously before and during the visit. She tells me so were others. I don't know who they are or who they were, but let's just say that your prayers were all answered, and my prayers as well, that it went very well. So I have no complaints about it. You know, it's not my job to argue with people or to argue with my son or daughter either. You know, they have their own lives to live, their own families to raise. You know, if they ask for information, we give it to them. Kathy often does on health principles and nursing, and not nursing, but health and parenting and mainly nutrition and things of that nature. And in the case of Nicolo, this time we got down there and he was teething, and he had a fever of 103 to 104. I think he got up to 105, and they took him to the doctor, pediatrician, and he said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Just give him a cool sitz bath, and you know, it just happens often with little babies like that." And so they did. And in a day or two, his temperature was back to normal. So we were all had a wonderful time just visiting and reconnecting. Something we all need to do. I wish we could do that as a spiritual family and visit and reconnect. But you know, even as a spiritual family, so many of God's people have so many different opinions on things, and especially on prophecy and even on doctrine and things, that when we look for the unity that we would like to see and have in the church, look at the Christian church today, there's precious little unity. And look at even those that do keep the Sabbath and the holy days. Even we are not united in many ways, because they go by different calendars and they have different relative beliefs on the details. There's old saying, the devil's in the details. Well, I don't know if the devil's in the details, but I think it's the devil that causes confusion and disagreement, and human nature is locked in there as well, so people don't always agree on the details. And I have some people, many people, I'd call them, generically speaking, brethren. They believe in Christ and in the Holy Spirit and in the inspiration of the Bible, and they keep the Sabbath, they believe in the Sabbath, they even believe in the holy days, but they don't all agree on how to count Pentecost. They don't all agree on when to keep the Passover or how to keep it, and they don't even all agree on what calendar to use. They got different calendars. So all I can say is, brethren, the devil has done a really beautiful job, a real fine job of sowing the seeds of confusion, and more confusion. He is the dark force, the dark power of the night, and he has sown confusion and blinded the eyes of this world, so they don't see or understand the gospel, the good news, the precious truth of God. And the world has never been more blinded than it is today. Politicians and national leaders are just so totally out of touch with reality. They think they've got it all. They think they know everything, and they don't know beans about beans, even about anything. They're just spiritually ignorant, like they're in a jail cell, isolated from the world, because they've been blinded by the devil. That old liar that's been a deceiver from the beginning. As John says in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, that old dragon, the serpent, the devil, who deceiveth the whole world. That's the way it is today. Well, the AreIgnoring newsletter tells us that they saw the new moon Monday, June the 10th, at 7:35 p.m. in Jerusalem, Israel. And a couple of other sightings were followed soon after that one. So we know that this is the 5th day of the month of Tammuz, going by the new moon. And in God's language in the Bible, the word Kodesh, which means new month or month, also is the word for moon, new moon. But Kodesh is the new moon, which begins the new month. So it's one equals the other, like a algebraic formula. A equals B, or Kodesh equals new moon and also equals new month. And the history proves they began the new month by citing the new moons. The Jews themselves admit that. Then they admit that they changed it in 358 AD. So all the evidence is there. They admit it. So the question is, should we go along with it now that the Jews are reestablished in Israel? And they do have the Sanhedrin there. They do have priests and rabbis there, ministers, so to speak. And they have the Torah, and they have the Sanhedrin and their own government. So what keeps them from reestablishing the biblical month? Well, I think it's just weakness and blindness and tradition. They don't want to change unless they have to change. There's many reasons, I'm sure. But if they have a temple rebuilt, then that will give them a great incentive to change, because then they need to change, be forced to change, so they can do the proper sacrifices on the new moon days, and so they could wave the Omer starting at the correct day, and all these things would then be dependent upon having the months in their proper sequence. But so far they've not shown any indication of when they're going to rebuild the temple or start to worship the God of their fathers in spirit and in truth. They're still dilatory. They're still holding back, as is the world in this blindness and utter corruption today. I've got items here in the news that I want to share with you today, because as we are on the final countdown for the coming of the Messiah, the final countdown for Armageddon, you might say, and the end of the age. And a lot of people were looking at the year 2012 as the end of the Mayan calendar epoch or cycle, and that would be the end of the world or end of the age. And it wasn't. So now we're in a transition period, so to speak, because the Bible prophecies show that the end of the age is going to come during this generation. That is, the generation of the refounding of the state of Israel. And Israel was refounded and reestablished in the Holy Land May 14, 1948. 1948. A generation in the Bible, it says in Psalm 90, is 70 years. Or if by good health and vigor, as long as 80 years, a man's lifespan. Well, 70 years from 1948 brings us to 2018, which is only 4 years from now. Oh, wait, yeah, 5 years from now. This is 2013, and 5 is 2018. So, can all the things that need to happen before Christ returns happen in the next 5 years? Well, the answer I say is yes, but if they don't, I mean, if time stretches out even longer than that, I'd be surprised. But it could happen, you know, like as I said, even that passage I read, quoted in Psalm 90, it says a generation is 70 years, or if by reason of strength, 80 years. So, you know, you could tack on another 10 years and say, well, then by all means, this generation would be over by 2028. That would be an 80-year generation from 1948 and the founding of the state of Israel. But it's normally considered to be 70 years. So I still think we're pretty much on schedule. And the world news is proceeding to show that the stage is being set for a lot of dire prophecies to start to come to pass. And we've been warning about it for weeks and months and years. warning about these things, but our understanding has been, a little clouded, not perfect vision. I don't know. I've often thought in the past that Christ would have come by now. I mean, if we counted 6,000 years from Adam and Eve, that time was up in 1997. And that was about 15 years ago. So he didn't come then. So then I thought for a while there that, well, maybe God added 7 years because Adam and Eve didn't sin, apparently, according to the book of Jubilees, which is extra-canonical Jewish literature before the time of Christ. And it says that Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden 7 years to the exact day before they ate the forbidden fruit and sinned against God and transgressed and were cast out of the Garden of Eden. Well, 7 years from the date of creation, that Archbishop Usher shows quite clearly, I think, was 4004 BC. You subtract 7 years from that, you come to 3997 BC. And if you count the 6,000 years then of man's being under the rule and influence of Satan the devil, if you count from then instead of 4004, then the 6,000 years wasn't up until 2004 AD, which was 9 years ago. And like I said in several months ago in another message, the book of Isaiah and the book of Kings shows that during the days of King Hezekiah of ancient Judah, that the king was ready to die at a very young age. And he'd been told by the prophet Isaiah to set his house in order and get ready to die. And Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and bitterly sobbed and prayed and that God would extend his life because he was still young. He had lots to do. And he prayed earnestly that God would delay his death. And God heard his prayer. He was a very devout, obedient king and a good man and a holy man of God. He was one of the best kings of Israel, like his father, your great-great-grandfather David, a man of real conviction and faith. And so God sent Isaiah back to him and said, tell the king that I've added 15 years to his life. And the trouble won't come for another 15 years. And then they'll punish Israel for their sins. So Hezekiah had 15 more years before the end came, before judgment came. And he was a type of Israel in a sense, and this event was recorded not only in the history of the kings of Israel in the Chronicles of Israel, but also in the prophecies of the book of Isaiah. Now, why would it be recorded there unless it's a prophecy for the future? An indication that in the future, at the end of this age, when God is once again dealing with Israel, and Israel is once again reestablished in the Middle East as it is today, that God will give us 15 more years in addition to the time before the end comes, before Dameron, before the crisis in Armageddon, before the return of the Messiah to judge the world. So 15 more years then from 2004 brings us to 2019. So that gives us about 5 or 6 more years before the Dameron, before the hammer falls, before judgment strikes, final judgment, the intervention of God. Well, that you can't prove anything by that. Those things are just possibilities or indications. They may very, very well be true, I think. But I see what's happening in America today, and we are going down the path of encroaching tyranny. Right now there are so many scandals affecting the American government that it makes your head spin. There's the Benghazi Gate scandal. There's the IRS Gate scandal. There's the AP Wire Services Gate scandal. And now there's the Fast and Furious scandal of the Justice Department. And then there's the last scandal to strike. It's been the eavesdropping, spying on Americans scandal of the NSA with their PRISM program, where they collect all the emails and all the data and all the telephone conversations of every American and people around the world, building a huge database to store this information in Utah with other databases scattered around the country. So I want to talk about some of these things today and read you some of the news of what's really going on, because most Americans turn a blind eye. Most Americans aren't concerned. Most Americans don't care. They just don't care. They're too busy either having fun, playing in the sun, riding their motorcycle, smoking pot, or engaging in all kind of promiscuous pleasures. And they really don't care what the government does, as long as the government just lets them have a good time. As long as the government doesn't intrude too much in their personal life, they think, well, we can trust the government, we can trust Obama. And, well, maybe someday the whole world is going to wake up and realize the only one you can really trust is God and His Word, and those who serve God and keep His commandments. The rest of the world is under the influence of that great liar, Satan the devil, who is the architect of lying. The first great liar, as Christ said in John 8, verse 44, speaking to the Jews there, the leadership, He said, you are of your father the devil, and the works of your father you will do. He was a liar from the beginning. And that's the truth. I have an article in front of me here from Liberty Digest, libertydigest.com, about Obama's secret police. Obama's secret police know you are reading this, is the headline of the article. So I read this on the internet. So they know who's reading everything on the internet. That's the idea. And they have a picture of this big eye, and the guy in the background is a government suit with a guy with a black suit and a tie. And then his big eye is like in a box, like a TV screen, looking straight at you. And it says, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, according to Edmund Burke. Well, I think Edmund Burke was a politician, lived in England a few centuries ago, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. If you don't do anything, if you're a good man, the evil will triumph and rise to the top. Or if the good men aren't organized, and if they don't stay good, then the evil will rise to the top. There's an old saying I heard years ago that cream rises to the top, and the people saying that said they were the cream. The cream rises to the top. Those who are cream always rise to the top, according to them. Well, my take on that saying is, well, the good part of the milk is in the milk itself and the milk protein. The cream is the fluff, the fat. The fat rises to the top. The fluff rises to the top. And that's what really happens in society. The evil pick their way and connive and claw their way to the top, and the good people tend to not be that ambitious and seeking for self, and they just get crawled all over as the others rise to the top. But that's the froth, that's the fat, not really the good part of the milk. Well, the article says, do you feel safe knowing that President Barack Obama and his secret police, the NSA, National Security Agency, are monitoring your communications and everything you read on the internet, including these very words? Certainly you're supposed to feel safer. Just ask about almost anybody in the mainstream media, as well as most Democrats, even Republicans in Congress. They are busy acquiescing to Obama's tyranny, all in the name of national security. Because, oh, we're doing this for national security, to prevent terrorist attacks. Well, how many terrorist attacks have they prevented? Any? They didn't prevent the Boston Massacre at the Boston Marathon. And we even had a warning of that one coming from the Russians in advance. A warning about those who were responsible for it. The article says it seems that Obama and the media and members of Congress have not read a word of history. They seem to have never heard about a democratically elected leader who enslaved all of Europe and started a war that killed 60 million people. In the meantime, his government and police and justice system turned a blind eye to every excess. All these leaders today would have to do is Google the words Adolf Hitler on their computer, and they'd find the sordid, slimy history of the German Gestapo state and the Nazi Republic. And that is a record of subversive tyranny, all in Nazi Germany, but we're not learning from history. We're ignoring history today. Says James Bamford. He writes in The Shadow Factory, the ultra-secret NSA. There is now the capacity, he says, to make tyranny total in America. And yet it seems hardly anyone cares anymore, other than libertarians and a few individual congressmen like Ron Paul and others, who said that the NSA revelations are a predictable result of a government that continues to erode our liberties while promising some glimmering hope of security. The writer of this article says he would one time believed that some senators like Lindsey Graham of South Carolina would be outraged by the Obama administration's attack on the First and the Fourth Amendments of the Constitution. Graham, though, says he's not sure who's entitled to the First Amendment rights of free speech, freedom of the press. He's not sure that Obama's eavesdropping campaign is bad because, they say it's needed for national security. But did you know while they are doing that, they're ignoring all these mosques and Muslim mosques throughout America, that they cannot and do not eavesdrop on them? The FBI has been forbidden to go into mosques to interview leaders of mosques in the name of freedom of religion. They're told to stay away from the mosques. And all of the terrorists that have attacked our country in the last several years have all been Muslim, radicalized in mosques. So we're ignoring the major source of terrorism and pretending to be fighting a war on terror by eavesdropping on every American's conversation, telephone and internet, email. And they collect all these records and house them in these huge laboratories, you might say, in warehouses of data information, so that if they ever want to investigate you, all they have to do is use your name or whatever and make a search for all the data on you in their mountain of data and get everything they want. Your credit history, your medical profile, your health problems, where you live, how much you earn, what kind of stuff you read, what you watch on the internet. They get to know you real good. Better than you know yourself. Yeah, and they call that freedom. They call that national security. Well, I don't think it is. He goes on to say, that Senator Lindsey Graham said, I don't think you're talking to terrorists. He said, I know I don't talk to terrorists on the phone or on the email. He said, I'm not, so we don't have anything to worry about, he says. You don't need to worry about anything unless you're talking to terrorists. Well, how do they determine who's a terrorist? In the final judgment, it's the FBI and the government's criteria that says who is a dangerous person and who isn't. All they have to do is redefine terrorists and say, well, look, anybody that believes in Jesus Christ, anybody that believes that Christ is coming again, anyone that believes that there's an Armageddon in our future, anyone that believes the Bible is a potential terrorist. And they make that determination, what are they going to find? A lot of Christians will automatically be classified as potential terrorists. Someday they could be rounded up and put in re-education centers, armed camps, prison camps in America. I'm not talking about the Russian gulag, but the American gulag, the American prison system. Can it happen here? Well, it happened in Germany. And Germany was a democratic republic until Hitler, with his charm and charisma, took over the state of Germany with his Gestapo and brown shirts and his goon squads. And now we have Obama in America with his private army being militarized. The second Hitler. Well, people don't believe that, but at least we still, by the grace of God, have freedom of speech in this country and freedom of political dissent. How long that's going to last, unless God intervenes, is something that is steadily encroaching and becoming more dangerous for people to speak out and to say anything critical of the government. That includes Congress, that includes congressmen, that includes senators, because they all realize now that they're all being spied upon. So all their little secrets are in the hands of the government. J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI years ago, had a lot of power in Washington. He stayed as the head of the FBI into his 80s, long past the age of retirement. Why did they allow him to do that? Because he had the secrets of everybody at his fingertips. He knew everything about everyone in Washington, D.C. He knew where the skeletons were, hidden in the closet. So they were afraid to go after him and make him retire. He might expose them. So they let him continue. Well, a lot of Republicans, I feel today, and senators and Democrats too, are letting Obama get away with practically, if not including, murder, because they don't want to be investigated and exposed and outed, as the expression goes. They don't want to lose their cushy job, and they'd rather go along than stand up and be bowed down, or have the whole press attack them and have their reputation besmirched. It's been proven or said, I've got the documents here, but General Petraeus, who was cashiered and basically fired by the Obama administration the day after Obama was reelected as president. David Petraeus was terminated, fired, or forced to resign. His job as the head of Army in the Army, actually as the head of the CIA at that time. Why was he forced to resign? Because he personally would not go along with the Obama Benghazi cover-up. He would not join in the refrain that said, oh, it's just all due to a video by this anti-Muslim guy in California. That caused the Benghazi riots and terrorist attack, only it wasn't called a terrorist attack. And he wouldn't go along with that, describing that as a riot due to a bad video. And so he got cashiered. He got outed. His extramarital affair became public knowledge and exposed by the FBI and the government as a reason to terminate his job. He was the best soldier we had in Afghanistan and Iraq during the last few years. And he was a very important American military man. And because he wouldn't go along with the lies and the scandal and help cover up, he was replaced and discharged from office. And the senators and others realized, well, if that could happen to a man like this American hero, David Petraeus, what would it take for them to get demoted or kicked out or replaced? Get on Obama's bad side, and you could become history. That's what they're afraid of. So Graham says, I'm not talking to terrorists. You're not talking to terrorists. So you and I don't have anything to be worried about. So I say, look, Senator Graham, who defines what is a terrorist? Someday you may be defined as a terrorist because you're outspoken. A lot of them think, well, we don't need to worry because Obama only has, 4 more years, 3.5 more years, then he'll be out of the White House. Well, a lot of damage can be done in 3.5 years. In fact, our whole system of government could change overnight. If we had a big enough terrorist attack or implosion due to the dollar collapsing, or an EMP attack, or a solar flare that strikes America and knocks all of our telecommunications offline, or it won't work for months, even for weeks or months, or even for years, we could be in a serious sack of trouble. So the writer of this article says, I'm glad Graham is sure that the government's not doing anything bad. And I'm really glad that Graham has looked into his crystal ball and can predict that the Obama administration will never abuse power. Rather tongue-in-cheek, isn't it? They've already abused power. The lies about the Benghazi cover-up and the Fast and Furious scandal of shipping modern weapons and ordnance to Mexican drug cartels, isn't that abuse of power? And condemning their enemies, having the IRS audit the taxes of every major supporter of Mitt Romney during the presidential race, and having them audit all the Tea Party members and those trying to form Tea Party type political groupings, for them to delay their recognition and to refuse to give them the status as a nonprofit organization. The biggest weapon in the hands of Obama today is the IRS, to attack his enemies, to destroy those who would try to stand up. Well, I just say, brethren, it's going to be hard times ahead of us, and it's coming down the pike rapidly. The train is on the track, and it's thundering down the track, going 100 miles an hour, and we're headed for the greatest smash-up in history. Obama, according to Bill Maher, one of his arch defenders on the left, on Real Time, Bill Maher said he doesn't mind that the NSA has all these powers because he trusts Obama. He then added that he would hate to see these powers, though, in the hands of a Republican. Well, he can trust Obama all he wants. I don't trust any of them. God says, put not your trust in men, or in princes, or the sons of princes, in whom is no help. Just read it in Psalm 118. Another part of the article says all must be okay because Obama says so. And the writer says, I am convinced that Obama is not interested in protecting America from terrorists. Glenn Greenwald, a reporter for The Guardian, in England, by the way. The American press is gutless and won't tell the truth, but The Guardian in England broke the NSA story. And he says, and he told Piers Morgan on CNN, there is a massive apparatus within the United States government that has complete secrecy, which has been building this enormous structure that has only one goal, and that is to destroy privacy and anonymity, not just in the United States, but around the world. Big Brother is watching you. The spying eye spies globally. It is now a fact of our modern life in this computer age. Glenn Greenwald says it is well past time that we have a debate about whether that's the kind of country and world in which we want to live. We haven't had that debate because it's all done in secrecy. And the Obama administration has been very aggressive about bullying and threatening anybody who thinks about exposing it or writing about it or even doing journalism about it. It's well past time that that came to an end. Well, it's past time. I would say, brethren, it's too late. I have an article appearing in the next PF magazine, God willing, that says, basically, is it too late? America, is it too late to change course? And my prediction is it's too late to avert judgment because the country is so far down the slippery slope that nothing can avert judgment now because the people are too dull in their senses. They are too lackadaisical and asleep and just driven by their lusts of the flesh. And all these free handouts from Obamacare, food stamps, and all the benefits that people receive from this cradle to the grave, modern age, utopian society, except it's not utopian. And the crunch comes when everything has to be paid for. It's just a temporary suspension of the laws of reality. It's the Alice in Wonderland. We are headed down the slide, and while you're going down the slide, it's fun. It's wee, like a child at a playland or a Disneyland. But once you reach the bottom of the slide and you reach the cliff or the jagged rocks, then the wee turns to horror. Greenwald says terrorists who represent a threat to Americans have known for years that electronic traffic has been monitored. That's why they use couriers. But Obama says there's no need to worry or fuss, and our freedoms are being protected. Why? Because his heart is in the right place. Well, can you tell me one time when the Obama administration hasn't lied? I mean, you take a look at all the lies they've been saying since he took office. It's like, this is the most lying, scandal-ridden president in history. His every other word is a lie. You have to think about everything he says. But he has a gift of gab and a nice smile, and he looks so earnest, and people give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm afraid we're going to find prophecy fulfilled in front of our very eyes. We are living in the time of the end. The Bible says one is going to rise up in our midst called the Antichrist, or the beast of Revelation. And he is going to be cunning and sharp of countenance and brilliant in strategizing. And he's going to rule the world and take office by flattery, by charming people, by mesmerizing them. But Obama says his heart's in the right place. We don't need to worry about him trying to take over or snoop into our closets or emails. He says, Obama says, my observation is that the people who are involved in America's national security they take this work very seriously, he said. They cherish our Constitution, he said. The last thing that he'd be doing is taking programs like this to listen to people's phone calls. As if he cherishes the Constitution. He wants to change it. He wants to get rid of it. You believe all this? There's a bridge over there in Brooklyn. You can buy it cheap. No, I'm not selling the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't own it. But you know, people will believe anything if it comes out of the mouth of a grand rascal. That's my wife's mother used to call these people the smooth talkers, grand rascals. There were a lot of them in the South in the past, and still are. A lot of grand rascals running around. And what they mean is they look so grand and so imposing, but they're really rascals. They're really thieves and corrupt in their heart. Obama says he's a Christian, and he says he went to Columbia University. And in 2003, he said that the Patriot Act was shoddy and dangerous, and something he would help dispose of if he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Well, the Patriot Act is still there, and he's using it like a drummer uses a drum. William Pitt, a British Prime Minister in the late 18th century, said, unlimited power is apt to corrupt the minds of those who possess it. And Obama's on the verge of unlimited power. Big Brother's eye is spying on you. And it's not going to get better. It's going to get a whole lot worse in the days ahead of us. Our illustrious, esteemed president and first family, by the way, are planning to take a vacation to Africa very soon. is going to cost $100 million. This is priceless information. Between $60 and $100 million is going to be invested in federal assets, including a large naval ship, 56 support vehicles, truckloads of bulletproof glass, fighter jets, and hundreds of federal personnel, all shipped to the sub-Saharan African nations, not because the military operation is going to be conducted, but because President Barack Obama is taking his wife and the kids on vacation. The Washington Post reports hundreds of U.S. Secret Service agents will be dispatched to secure facilities in Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. The Navy aircraft carrier, or amphibious ship, with fully staffed medical trauma center, will be stationed offshore in case of emergency. Military cargo planes will airlift 56 support vehicles, including 14 limousines and 3 trucks loaded with sheets of bulletproof glass to cover the windows of the hotels where the first family is going to stay. Fighter jets will fly in shifts, giving 24-hour coverage over the president's airspace so they can intervene quickly if an errant plane gets too close. These extraordinary security provisions are outlined in a confidential internal planning document obtained by the Washington Post about the first family's trip. $100 million for a little journey to South Africa. Amazing. In a recent broadcast, Rush Limbaugh talks about what's going on in Congress, and he has a theory on why the Republicans are willing to pass the amnesty bill that the Democrats want, which is going to create instantaneously millions of new Democrats. Why in the world would Republicans go along with this charade? Well, Rush Limbaugh has a theory. He says the Republican Party is embarrassed by its own base. How many times have I sat here and reminded you of this, he says. He told a story about his first trip ever to visit the Hamptons in Virginia, where he was visiting a famous American Republican. After dinner on the deck, a guy comes up to him, he says, and a name you would know, but he won't give the name out, and punches me with his finger in the chest and says, "What are you going to do about those Christians?" Remember, Limbaugh says, this was my first trip to the Hamptons. The man complained about the Christians and their pro-lifers, their anti-abortion stance, hurting the GOP and because of their beliefs. Some of these same people have done the same thing to me, Rush says, regarding gun control, saying that the Republican Party is now ashamed of its own base, those who believe in owning guns, and Christians. Seems like the whole world has gone crazy now for gun control. Obama is going to enact the United Nations policy on gun control, even without the benefit of Congress to back him up. And who's going to get in his way, since he has all these secret dossiers and all this secret information on Congress and all those who inhabit Congress? Talk about an Orwellian police state. Rush Limbaugh says, I assume that some Republicans think there's a new group of people that would become their base if they just got rid of these old pro-lifers, if they just got rid of this religious crowd of these Christians, if they just got rid of the gun nuts, then they'd be okay. Well, that's such a crock of baloney. You know, these are the heartland Americans. These are the real true blue Americans they want to get rid of and bring in a new state, the Obama state. Obama cares. He cares about himself and his policies, his future, his power. Well, going on. I'm going to skip over a lot of this because I don't want to take too much time. Americans have killed another 7 people in North Waziristan with their drones. The U.S. ambassador to Israel has praised Israel and greets the Tel Aviv gay parade in Tel Aviv, Israel. The U.S. ambassador to Israel, Dan Shapiro, conveyed warm wishes to the gay marchers from President Barack Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry and the American people to the gay parade which took place in Tel Aviv last Friday. There's no better place to celebrate than in Tel Aviv, the friendliest city in the world in the LGBT community, the ambassador said. So we're endorsing the gay mantra around the world, even the gay parade in Tel Aviv, Israel. Now, in a newsletter I've been getting from a Christian who used to be a Muslim, Walid Shobat, and he talks in an article he's written about a confluence of scandals: the IRS, the FBI, and the NSA. And he says, question, in light of what is known about the pervasiveness of the NSA surveillance program, shouldn't it now be considered scandalous that mosques are off limits in the FBI, even though it's old news? With respect to the NSA scandal, he says, let's set aside the issue of criminality relative to leaker Edward Snowden's behavior and focus on the federal government's behavior. First, we know the IRS deliberately profiled Jewish, Christian, and conservative Tea Party groups for discrimination. It's a matter of public record now. We also know that the foundation of a radical Muslim, who just so happens to be the half-brother of the president, Barack Obama, received preferential, expedited, retroactive, and illegal customer service from the IRS, from Lois Lerner in particular. On the other hand, Investors Business Daily reports the White House assures that tracking our every phone call and keystroke is to stop terrorists, and yet it won't snoop in mosques where the terrorists are. Isn't that hypocrisy? That's right. The government's sweeping surveillance of our most private communications excludes the jihad factories for homegrown terrorists are radicalized. Since October 2011, mosques have been off limits to FBI agents. No more surveillance or undercover sting operations without high-level approval from a special oversight body of the Justice Department, run by Eric Holder. Who makes up this body and how do they decide the requests? Nobody knows. The names of the chairman, members, and staff are all kept secret. Talk about a secret government. No more surveillance of mosques, the writer says. Isn't the revelation that all Americans are being surveilled the primary thing we learned from the NSA details of their program? So, if mosques are exempt from FBI surveillance, are they also exempt from NSA surveillance? The NSA data collection scandal might have been received very differently if it had not come on top of all the other Obama scandals. It's just one right after another. One scandal blows in before another scandal has a chance to blow out. Just like a row of hurricanes smashing into the Obama administration. But when another one strikes, you forget the one that went before. It becomes old news. It's almost like giving the president a pass, because so many scandals you can't concentrate on any of them. And Congress is inept. They won't investigate. If they do, it's too little too late. The game is afoot, as Sherlock Holmes would say. Walid Shobat, in another email, tells us about in the NSA surveillance and the what he calls the Petraeus effect. Petraeus effect, and let me explain what that means. This is written by Ben Barak. It says that the Obama administration has the goods on CIA Director David Petraeus and used what it knew to destroy him when he was CIA Director, and he wouldn't play ball relative to Susan Rice's Benghazi talking points. This is as close to a self-evident truth as you can get, he said. But perhaps that wasn't just about meting out punishment to a disloyal subordinate. It may have also been a shot across the bow to other people in the government who desperately want to keep their jobs. Don't criticize Obama or his administration. Watch your mouth and your toes and your feet, lest the Obama administration out you in your skeletons in your closet. That's why God says righteousness exalts a nation. If there were no skeletons in the closet, then a nation could be righteous and fearless. But because everybody's covering something up, just about everybody, and cover up here and a cover up there, and they're afraid of exposure to the light of day, they keep their mouth shut. And so the growing fire of iniquity continues growing underground, taking over. As the details about the NSA surveillance program started coming out, Attorney General Eric Holder was asked by Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois if Holder could assure that, quote, no phones inside the Capitol were monitored of members of Congress, unquote. Holder would not answer the question. As a result, every member of Congress who had Petraeus-like secrets began taking inventory of what the administration might know. This is a perfectly logical conclusion, he says, not simple speculation. This is playing by the new rules of the Obama government. Remember, Barack Obama was taught in his early training, mentoring, by a communist in Hawaii. He learned about Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, read the book, and has been a practitioner of the book. His operation manual. Rule number 4 of Rules for Radicals, and by the way, that book, as I recall, was dedicated to that original great rebel, radical, Lucifer, Satan the devil. So you know where Barack Obama got his mentoring, his learning? From the textbook, the operations manual dedicated to Lucifer, Satan the devil, written by Saul Alinsky. Rule number 4 says, make opponents live up to their own books of rules. You can kill them with this, for they can no more obey their own rules than the Christian church can live up to Christianity, he wrote. Rule number 8, keep the pressure on. Use different tactics and actions. And use all events of the period for your purpose. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. Just keep hammering away. To illustrate how rule number 4 was used, we have the empirical evidence that Petraeus was destroyed by being made to live by his own book of rules. A 4-star general and CIA director having an extramarital affair is something he would likely do anything to prevent from coming out. In the case of Petraeus, it appears he either wasn't willing to stretch the lie about Benghazi any further, consequences be damned, or he called the administration's bluff and guessed wrong. They outed him and they fired him. This reality is not lost on members of Congress and other spectators. As far as rule number 8 goes, if Edward Snowden intended to harm the administration, he may have strengthened it by exposing what's going on with the NSA, all the illegal surveillance. How could he strengthen Obama by exposing it? Well, he says, first, if there was a scandal that was really beginning to do damage, that is, the IRS scandal, now attention has been redirected to the NSA surveillance program. It may just be that these revelations not only not harming Obama at all, but giving him the leverage to covertly coerce a majority of individuals in the branch of government that is supposed to keep him in check. Ezekiel chapter 28 speaks of this end-time ruler of Babylon or Tyre. And America is end-time Babylon, the great trading, world-ruling megalopolis. And Ezekiel 28 speaks of him and says of the leader, you are wiser than Daniel. He has political acumen, wiser than Daniel, the prophet of God, who was an advisor of several different governments in Babylon and Persia. He survived the collapse of the Babylonian Empire and was a high-up advisor in the succeeding Persian Empire. He was a wise and astute man of God and a politician in a political office, as an advisor and as an intelligence man. But this king of Babylon, the Word of God says in Ezekiel, is wiser than Daniel. Speaking about the end-time king of Babylon, the one today ruling the roost. So all these scandals, one replacing another, gets our minds off the previous scandals. This may give Obama the leverage to influence a majority of congressmen to back his plans and not oppose them, lest they suffer the consequences of being exposed because of this great surveillance program he's been running on them. The author says, how else can we explain that while the administration is seemingly drowning in a sea of scandals, Obama's agenda on Obama's immigration agenda is sailing through Congress? Why would Senator Marco Rubio, Republican for Florida, totally and completely abandon the constituency which elected him, without which he would never have gotten elected? Legal immigrants. Why would Rubio stand with the likes of Schumer, Durbin, and Menendez on anything, let alone such a divisive wedge issue as immigration? Millions of new Democrats, Obama's future and that of the Democratic Party is assured. The Republicans are just becoming a footnote in American history. They're self-destructing. They don't have the character or the guts to stand firm, to stand up. They are divided. Obama knows how to divide his opponents. Divide and conquer is the name of the game. Well, I want to get onto where this is leading. Another news snippet I just want to hit on in passing on this. Are you on the list of millions of Americans who will be subject to detention in case of martial law? Are you one of the millions of Americans that have been designated as a threat to national security by the U.S. government? Will you be subject to detention when martial law is imposed during a major national emergency? Is that possible? You ever stop and think about it? Well, I would ask you another question. Are you a Christian? Do you believe the Bible is the Word of God? You keep the Sabbath day? Do you believe the Muslim religion is a false religion? Do you believe in the Constitution? You believe the book of Revelation means what it says? You believe a future Armageddon is coming? You believe Christ is going to return? Well, those are the earmarks of a potential terrorist, according to new standards. Not so new, really. Things that the FBI and the government are looking at. Our government is no longer Christian, if it ever was. It's becoming very decisively anti-Christian, pro-gay, pro-homosexual, pro-transgender and lesbian, and pro-Muslim, and anti-Christian, and is increasing by leaps and bounds every day. Just an inkling of what is going on is this fascinating story. Again, this is released by Walid Shobat, who was a former Muslim who converted to Christianity and has his own newsletter. He was former Muslim Brotherhood member, now peace activist. Walid Shobat. In an article he says, written by Theodore Shobat, Obama's brother works with man who attacked U.S. Embassy. That headline is shocking enough. The article says, since the IRS scam has become the most momentous topic of the day, we now know, thanks to my father, Walid Shobat, that Obama's brother, Malik Obama, is deeply associated with Omar al-Bashir, the one who was behind the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum, Sudan, which occurred around the same time as the Benghazi attack. Theodore Shobat wrote at that time, the attacks by Muslims on American embassies in Egypt and Libya have shocked the media enough, but now North Sudan has just exploded, with mobs raiding both the British, German, and American embassies. Who is responsible? According to Al Rokaba, a Sudanese news site, it is Omar al-Bashir, the president of North Sudan, and his despotic government who is behind this. Al-Bashir is a modern Hitler. He is an Islamic tyrant responsible for the deaths of over 3 million people in the Sudan, all in the name of jihad in his war against Christians. Christians in the Sudan. 3 million put to death by this modern-day Hitler, al-Bashir. Now, what does Obama's brother have to do with this? Well, Obama's brother is working with an enemy of the United States. He's working with him. Is it any wonder, then, as to why he has been so pompous toward American liberty and yet so helpful to al-Bashir? In 2012, Obama had supported the Islamic uprisings in the Middle East and had in fact stopped a revolution against the Hitler of Africa, Omar al-Bashir, who had been responsible for killing over 3 million people. Obama stopped the revolution against him. Shobat wrote in an article at that time, the support of the rebels in Syria and the condemnation of Assad by the Obama administration can only make one question as to why he is against this particular regime in Syria, but not that of Omar al-Bashir, the tyrant who's been responsible for the deaths of millions through the jihad he's commenced against Christians and the North Arab Muslims of Darfur. In fact, Obama had at one point in time prevented Salva Kiir, the Christian president of South Sudan, from aiding rebels who wanted to topple al-Bashir's regime and replace it with a secular government. Malik, the brother of Obama, is the executive secretary for the Islamic Dawah organization, which is stationed in Khartoum, Sudan, and which has its primary focus on expanding Wahhabism in the African subcontinent. That's the terrorist form of the Wahhabi religion to conquer the world for Muhammad. Its basis and origin was in Saudi Arabia. It was also in Khartoum where Bashir declared that he was going to make Sudan 100% Islamic. Malik Obama has the same desires as Bashir. Both of them attended the General Conference of the Islamic Council of South Sudan. Both of them are pro-Muslim and anti-Christian. The conference they attended there was very anti-Christian. Bashir's uncle, Ayab Mustafa, is a part of Bashir's government. He supported a fatwa, or declaration of Muslim declaration, which said the following: one of the greatest calamities and evils is to permit an exhibition entitled the Holy Bible. This lying forgery, he said, which allows the kuffars, non-Muslims, to spread their religion amongst Muslims and to fascinate the common man, that Christianity prevents them from carrying out the path of Allah. The duty for whomsoever Allah has given a hand by leader of man, of responsibility, is to prevent this evil, that is, the Bible, or else he is a traitor to Allah and his Prophet and to the Muslim community. This is very close to what the Islamic Dawah organization, of which Malik Obama, the brother of the president, is an executive secretary. They believe that Muslims in Kenya suffer from the great challenge of the tyranny of the church, which is known for its aggression, quote unquote. This anti-Christian sentiment, of which Malik Obama upholds and instills, is exactly what is fueling the violence against Christians in Africa and the Middle East and North Africa, and soon, I'm afraid to say, even America. The article says right now Bashir's government is executing the de-Christianization of and the systematic Holocaust of Christians in his country. He is violently enforcing that Arabic, the language of Islam, be the dominant tongue. Foreign missionaries have been forcibly deported and churches have been bulldozed. In 2012, Bashir gave Christians till March to leave North Sudan, but 500,000 of them were stranded, leaving them to be open targets for Muslims thirsty for Christian blood. Malik Obama is not only working with a terrorist who attacked the United States, but also a mass murderer. And he is the brother of the President of the United States of America. Well, the fact is, the Obama administration, brethren, is just beginning to show its true colors. It's anti-Christian. Attacking Christians, the Billy Graham campaign, auditing Billy Graham and his sacred purse, or whatever, it's Samaritan's Purse charity. The Obama administration is definitely anti-Christian. And they are Big Brother today. They hear everything. They are snooping. And they are storing up records of everybody in the country and the world that they can get a hold of. Barack Obama said a few years ago, whatever we once were, we are no longer a Christian nation. And he is not a Christian. Question is Obama a Muslim in Christian clothing? Pastor Wright, who used to be his pastor, who gave a famous speech where he damned the United States, asking God to damn the United States from the pulpit. But Wright wasn't the one who corrupted Obama. It was Obama who used Wright by cultivating a relationship for his own political gain, namely to cover his Islamic beliefs, according to Klein in his book on Obama, The Amateur. Very famous book, which came out during the election campaign. Klein says, quoting Wright, "Did you convert Obama from Islam to Christianity?" "That's hard to tell," Wright replied. "I think I convinced him that it is okay for him to make a choice in terms of who he believed Jesus is. And I told him it really was okay and not a put down of the Muslim part of his family or his Muslim friends." So even Wright had no inkling whether Obama converted or not. But Obama definitely has Muslim sensibilities and a Muslim perspective to view the world. And he has taken an anti-Semitic approach to the White House. And he's encouraging more Americans to study in Muslim communities. He's been a Muslim all his life. And he's very protective today of Muslim rights in America, even more so than Christian rights. So scandals are breaking over the White House like never before in history. God tells us that we need to beware. As he says in John chapter 16, verses 1 through 3, "These things have I spoken to you, that you should not be made to stumble. They will put you out of the synagogues. Yes, the time is coming that whoever kills you will think he's offering God service. And when they do these things to you, they do them because they have not known the Father or me. But these things I have told you, that when the time comes, you may remember that I told you of them. And these things I did not say to you at the beginning, because I was with you. But now I go away to him who sent me. But God has sent the Holy Spirit to be with us, brethren. We need to call upon him and draw close to God in this day of perilous tribulation that's coming upon the world and upon our nation. We need to expect persecution. We need to pray to God to send his Holy Spirit to inspire us, to give us the words and the thoughts at that time, to bear witness and to stand forth firm for the truth, and having done all, to stand with Christ when he returns. We are heading on a perilous journey into the apocalypse, and we need to stand firm in Christ through the power of the Spirit of God. So let's do it, giving God the praise, the honor, and the glory, and thanking him for the opportunity. Blessed be the name of the Lord our God,